So we're going to go into electrical cord safety. Electrical cords are one of those things a lot of people don't think that it's a problem, but you can create a lot of damage not only to your TVs, microwaves, things like that, but it's also a big fire hazard. You don't want to run cords underneath entrance mats at the front of the house or in the kitchen. Things like that, or floor rugs on the floor. You want to try to make sure that those things are free. You don't want to staple them to stuff. There's a high probability when you do that you could puncture the actual cord and cause problems. A lot of people try to hide them along their baseboards, things like that. You don't want to stuff them down in between the carpet and the baseboard, those kinds of things. It's just asking for trouble later down the road. The other thing that you don't want to do is overload your circuits. You don't want to put, an extension cord with a power strip at the end and then put 6 different plugs on there all at the same time. You're just asking for problems, especially with fires and issues with your electricity. It also creates potential problems with TVs, computers, things like that, where you can damage those and they won't work because of that. So you always want to check if you're using an extension cord to power something. You always want to check to see what the maximum capacity for that cord is before you use it. You don't want to take one of those little white extension cords that we use for Christmas lights and plug a refrigerator into it. It's not, it's not made to hold the current that's going through there to run that refrigerator. The other thing you want to be careful of, a lot of people nowadays use space heaters. Space heaters are a lot of people love them because it's instant warmth right next to them, but they are a huge fire hazard, especially when you use them with extension cords. They are not made to run with an extension cord. So make sure that you're reviewing that with your tenants if they have extension cords. The other thing, and I don't have an example of this, but with plugs, you see a lot of times that you have an outlet and it has the 3 prongs, the 2 on the top, and then this is a ground prong on the bottom. You'll see where some of the older style plugs maybe in homes might not have the ground prong, or you have an extension cord that you're trying to plug into something, or something you're trying to plug in that doesn't have a ground prong and you don't, or it has one and what you're trying to plug it into doesn't have one. You never want to take one of those adapters that you can buy in the store, those little adapters, and bypass that ground prong. There's a reason why that's there. So some TVs, things, newer stuff is designed without it, and a lot of times you're able to plug those right into outlets or extension cords without a problem. But anything that's a little bit older, when I say older, 3 to 5 years old, might have a ground prong still, especially with tools and things like that. You don't want to take those and bypass that ground prong because you're just creating another risk for yourself by doing that. Again, I already covered surge protectors, but a lot of people use surge protectors in your home. Surge protectors are made to plug right into the outlet. They have an internal fuse in them that will shut them off if they get overloaded, but they're not made to run off of 25-foot extension cord and then plug in, multiple other things into it later down the road. So always use surge protectors right at the outlets on your home. Move on to the next page, and we're going to cover circuit breakers. Now, I'm not sure if some of the older homes might have the old style fuses in them that you turn or don't turn, but most of that stuff has been outdated, and all the homes probably have just general breakers in them. Most of those breakers are similar to a light switch. They go one way or the other, and you'll hear a popping noise when it opens or closes. If you're in your kitchen and let's say you notice that your microwave's out, or you're in your living room and your TV won't turn on, that's always the first place you're going to want to check because there's a high probability that it might have popped a breaker. Okay. When you pop a breaker, you're just going to go to the panel. It's usually going to be, there's on and then there's off. It's usually going to be somewhere in the middle and it'll be kind of loose. You're going to want to toggle it back off to off, which kind of resets it internally, and then switch it back to on, okay? Once you do that, if the breaker pops off again, it's highly likely that you have another issue. Either there's an electrical problem, or maybe there's something wrong with the component that's plugged into it, or lamp, or whatever it is. There might be another potential problem. That's where you're going to want to call somebody to come out and take a look at it. Especially when you're overloading circuits. If you get into where you're plugging a lot of stuff into the same power outlets, you could overload a circuit. And what you have to remember is when they build a house, 2 of the outlets in the living room might also be tied to 3 of the outlets in a bathroom. Or 1 of the outlets in the kitchen might be tied to a couple of the outlets in the garage. With that, you have to check all of those circuits and become familiar with where all that stuff is located, so you're able to correct it. Also, the panels have a main shutoff on them. So when you go to your panel, most of the time there'll be a separate breaker that's located towards the top that shuts off the power to the whole house. Okay, if that pops, generally there's a problem. You could have had a lightning issue, or a problem with a surge through the main line into your home. You could have a major overload issue in the house. There could be all sorts of potential problems. So if you pop that main breaker to your home and you reset it and it pops again, or you notice something that's out of the ordinary, you're going to want to call somebody immediately to get somebody to take a look at that. Usually most panels, I say most because not all of them are, but most panels are generally labeled with where stuff is located, or a general idea of what that particular breaker operates. And then it's always recommended, make sure you have a flashlight somewhere in the house, and keep it somewhere where you know it's going to be. A lot of people keep them above the refrigerator, in your bedroom, in a nightstand, wherever that might be. Make sure you have a flashlight to where if the power does go out, you're able to get to that panel and check those different things. All right, so last thing we're going to cover is ground fault circuit interrupters. Any homes that were built in the last 25 years, and probably even some older than that, have these circuit interrupters in them. These do a couple things. They protect you from water, and they're usually located in kitchens, bathrooms, places like that. They will automatically trip if the circuit's overloaded. Things of that nature that could cause a potential problem. Usually, you don't want to plug appliances and things like that directly in these. They're not made for that type of heavier duty stuff. Sometimes microwaves and things like that can be okay, but refrigerators, stuff like that, are usually on a separate circuit and you don't have to worry about that. Also, something to remember, like I mentioned earlier, where you might have a couple plugs in the living room that are tied to a plug in the kitchen. Well, that plug in the kitchen might be this. So if you go to the breaker panel and your panel's not tripped and your TV's not turning on, generally this is going to have a light on it that's going to light up, okay? When that lights up, that means that relay has been tripped, and you're going to want to reset that. Some of them have green lights, some of them have a green and a red light. It just depends on what kind is in your home, but they're all different. There's a button on it that basically says reset. When you push that button in, some of them you have to push once, some of them you have to hit them twice. The first time resets the unit, the second time engages the button. Be particular to push them in as full as you can. Sometimes you might push it in and it might not reset. You can tell with this one here, if you just push it in, it's not resetting. You have to really push it in and get it to pop in there, and what that's doing is it's re-engaging the switch that's inside there. So you're always going to want to check those. A lot of people will pop those in bathrooms with hair dryers, curling. If you have a curling iron running and a iron to iron your clothes on the same circuit, a lot of times it might pop this because they're requiring such a high demand to get to turn them on. So make sure that you're checking those if you have a power issue. The other place to always check, newer homes will have not only this, but then in the breaker panel, they'll also have on the actual breaker itself a push button on that breaker to reset that as well. So When this pops, that might also pop as well. You'll have to go out and hit that reset to reset that that GFCI.